Hello and welcome to the preview playoff of the Chester Taylor League podcast. Is that what this is? Playoffs? Is that what this is, Sam?
Playoffs.
Man.
Yes, we are here, and only 6 of us made it. Sorry to everyone that didn't. Boy, that was I don't know if you were paying attention. That was the most exciting fantasy moments at the end of those afternoon games I've had in a long time in fantasy.
Yeah, Bo and Mark. You didn't jump Mark, but you jumped Bo, and that was pretty excellent. That was awesome.
But I needed Mark to win, so I didn't. It wasn't in my own hands, which is a scary feeling. But we pulled it off. We did it.
Mark is just what a changed guy. He comes through in the clutch now, doesn't he? Every time. Guy's just amazing. He's transformed himself into something different.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't believe in evolution, I may now because of Mark.
Well, that's maybe.
Anyways.
Some parts of it might be true, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Yep. We got lots to talk about here. Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Bo, for your time being ridiculed. But yes, there can only be one. The Vikings are. It's been 14 weeks since we've done a podcast, Sam. Way too long. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I know. We've been bad.
But there's been some power rankings, and people have been really involved this year, so we could have had more content, but what the heck. So.
Yeah, what we should have done is outsourced our podcast as well and included some of these guys in, but we were foolish. We're fools. Maybe next year.
Yeah, I think next year's going to be like the ludicrous year. Everyone's going to be pumped up. You know, there can only any changes next year on the horizon at all, or not really?
Well, it's up for a debate. I've heard some rumblings about maybe changing who gets buys and changing up division, changing up schedule, but haven't made any decisions yet. I'll leave it up to the guys, see what they like, and go from there.
Okay, well, just a little update there. But Vikings are 10-2. We are basically at 15% odds to win the Super Bowl. That hasn't happened since 2009. So that's kind of a fun feeling. I tried to get too excited, trying to calm ourselves, and now we got the fantasy playoffs starting.
It's tough because, every time, this team just has a way of putting you right where you think they've got it. And right now, in the back of my mind, I'm saying there's no team I'm scared of, really, up until the Super Bowl with New England. Any team in the NFC, I think we got them. But they just have a way of getting you right where they want you, and then they disappoint you. So I think the right call is probably just to hold off your excitement and just enjoy us winning games while you can. And if they win the Super Bowl, then we can enjoy it then.
And we're probably going to see Teddy week 17, so get ready for that. Teddy.
Man, if the Vikings play the Patriots in the Super Bowl, I am just going to be wherever Squirrel is and hope that the Vikings win. That's my goal.
We kind of have to have Squirrel there together and just...
Yes, totally. And, man, if the Vikings beat the Patriots and knocked off Tom Brady, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay, let's stick to fantasy football here. So... Well, let's start with matchups this week. Sorry for the 6 that are not in the playoffs, but you will not be talked about too much, this podcast.
No.
So, you guys...
But what I will do is I will post draft order. So the 6 teams that didn't make it, you will have matchups that are available, but they do not matter. So you don't have to worry about starting a lineup. You don't have to worry about anything. Your season's over. And... the draft order for them is set. So I will post the draft order, and then sometime after the championship game, I will also post stuff for everyone about projected keepers, draft order, who the top guys coming out are, and the top guys throwing back. So should be fun.
Great. Well, yeah, you guys, you're kind of like the ugly sister of, when there's two, a lot of times there's 2 girls, and there's always a hotter one. And you guys are the ugly one this year. So... enjoy the draft pick.
Has there ever been 2 sisters who are equally attractive?
No.
Never.
It hasn't happened yet. But congratulations, Zach, on Saquon Barkley. Woo!
Yes. we'll see if that's the direction he goes.
Nah, if he doesn't, I'm going to smack him. But anyways, we have two matchups. We have myself versus Volk and you versus Jordo. So to not be too self-deprecating, we're going to break down the matchup. You will break down Volk versus me, and I will break down you versus Jordo. So you want to start us off with a little breakdown of the matchup?
Yeah, so I'm just pulling it up here just to really get a good idea of what we got. At face value, it's just so tough. In my opinion, leagues are won by. You rarely see a team that just like steamrolls people throughout the year and then does it in the playoffs. Jeremy did it last year, but it's just so rare. Oftentimes, it's you have a guy on your team who gets hot and maintains it throughout the playoffs. So your guys' teams are pretty much summed up by that. The two hottest players in fantasy football right now are Keenan Allen and Alvin Kamara, and they're facing each other, but that's closely followed by Antonio Brown. He has been lights out as well.
And LaShawn
When I
McCoy.
look at your teams, Wayne, you have probably the best skill positions out there, and with Rob Gronkowski out, your tight end isn't lagging too far behind. A lot's going to depend on Drew Brees, honestly, and with Fournette playing Seattle, that could be a tough matchup. I'm just looking at it and just wonder. I mean, it's even, in my opinion, you guys are probably the two best teams in the league and the most explosive. So the winner of this game very well might win the whole thing. I got to give the edge to you just because you have those two wideouts who are going nuts right now. But the Jay Ajayi starting in any lineup is so risky. But non-PPR, I think you can make up for it with a few touchdowns. If you can get 3 touchdowns from Brown and Keenan combined, you're rock solid. So I'd have to go with you. But Jay Ajayi, Kareem Hunt is probably going to be your Achilles heel if you do lose.
Yeah, my lifeline is Kareem Hunt, and he's not been showing up, so he almost has to show up eventually. And even though Ajayi is not projected to score as much as some of the other players, I actually like his matchup. I think the Eagles are looking to recover strongly from their loss last week. They're going all guns blazing, and that means it's going to be Ajayi targeting not just – I mean, they have Aaron Donald and Brockers on that Chargers defense, but if you can run off center, off guard, off tackle, you're going to slay the Rams, and the Eagles are going to be taking no prisoners next week. In the run game, I think Ajayi kills it.
Well, let's hope it's him. There's a 3-headed monster going on in Philly right now, and you just hope that Ajayi can get a touchdown, really.
Not only is he going to get a touchdown, it's going to be a hot take. He's going to run for over 130 yards and have a touchdown, and then have 50 yards of receiving. So
is that a bold call? Is that a bold prediction?
That's a hot take. You can take that to the bank.
Ajayi runs wild instead of Wayne's run. Okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll see what happens. If Ajayi does that, I can almost guarantee you will win, despite what Kamara will probably do.
He's got to come down a little bit, but so does Keenan Allen. So we'll see what happens. But I appreciate that. So for you and for Jordan, two very different teams. Jordan, talk about consistent. He scored between 75 and 85 points per week, 11 out of 13 weeks. That is ridiculous. I mean, that's consistent. A lot of that is off of Todd Gurley, who has a tough matchup this week. But he's getting production out of Robbie Anderson, who? Cooper Kupp, who? And
the Moscow Mule.
And the Moscow Mule, beast mode hasn't been the best thing ever, but he's still gotten enough out of him. And this team is just, it's solid. It doesn't look like it on paper, but when it comes to actual production, these numbers are not lying. So it's a formidable team. You on the other hand, talk about explosive. I actually think you are the most explosive team in this league with those 3 wide receivers that could go off at any time. And if all 3 of them go off, boy, good luck. You were a little bit lucky this year with your record. You had a lot of weeks below 70 points, so I don't know if I like your odds to win it all, but I like your odds to win this week. If that makes sense. So,
Well, look at us just stroking each other's egos. You know what worries me about Jordan? And I think I have a team in another league that's a lot like his, where his guys aren't going to go off every week, but one of his guys is going to go off every week. So Kelsey could have 2 touchdowns. Anderson could have 120 and a TD. Todd Gurley could have 150 total yards and 2 TDs. Kirk Cousins, too. He could put up 30 points. But not all of them are going to go off this week. So that usually puts him in between those numbers. So the team overall is consistent, but it's made up of a lot of inconsistent players, which ironically leads to consistency.
That's a good point about Kelsey too. I mean, if you can have the high ceiling and just you have someone, that's kind of the Volk scenario. Volk does the same thing a lot of years too, where he just has a lot of high ceiling players, and it pays off for him to be a somewhat consistent team. I'm just waiting for him. Todd Gurley, he's got to be wearing down a little bit. I just see a little bit of regression across the entire board for the entire team, and I think that leads to his demise this first week. But we'll see.
Well, the thing about Gurley is he's not getting quite the same amount of carries that he was early in the season, which is really, probably good for the real life Rams, but bad for his fantasy output. And it's just weird. This is probably the weirdest fantasy year of all time because he's starting Robbie Anderson, and I'm actually worried about it. And I'm starting Alex Collins, and if I were him, I'd be kind of worried about it. It's like, who are these people? And that's everywhere across the board. It's tough for me to bench Kenny Stills watching Mike Evans put up 3 points a game, but that's where we're at this year.
You got to stretch your studs, but the turnover this year has been unreal. So, final predictions. I think you picked me, and I'm going to pick you. So we're in love with each other. So that's nice.
All right, fair enough. Hey, if you want to be picked, get on the podcast. That's kind of what I'm gathering.
Yep. So then, just quickly previewing the other 2 playoff teams, Jeremy and Cody. These 2 teams are actually waiting for their best players to come back. Isn't that crazy? So if Aaron
should be very, very happy that they got the bye.
Yes.
Because that could lead to Aaron Rodgers being back. Although another kind of weird phenomenon in fantasy is sometimes bad things happen, but it works out well. There was a year where it was a couple years ago. It was the year that D'Angelo Williams was going crazy because Le'Veon Bell tore his ACL. And then Doug Baldwin went crazy at the same time. I got an offer to trade D'Angelo Williams for 2 guys that would have knocked Doug Baldwin out of my lineup. So I would have lost both Williams and Baldwin from my lineup. Those 2 led the league in points, and I won the championship with a move I didn't want to make.
I remember that.
Sometimes Aaron Rodgers might come back, but you'll wish you had started Josh McCown or Case Keenum. It's kind of funny how that could turn out.
Yeah, with Cody's team is actually Jordan Howard's been great. He has a lot of consistent players other than your Stephon Diggs. I think he's probably the most inconsistent starter on Cody's team, which is saying quite a lot of good things about his team. So I like his odds. Aaron Rodgers, that guy is magic, man. He sometimes I get where you're coming from, where it might be bad, but it's more likely going to be he's trying to get his team to the playoffs, and that leads to good things normally. And with Jeremy, I will say he has, I don't want to say scabbed out, but Marvin Jones may be the most underrated player in fantasy the last 7 weeks. I know you think Alvin Kamara and Keenan Allen are hot, but as far as a pickup off the waivers, guy just sitting there and you get that kind of production, I don't think there's been any better return on investment than Marvin Jones since like week 6 or 7. So enjoy that, Jeremy, while it lasts.
Kamara was picked up off waivers too. So that doesn't help. But yeah, Jerry's a weird team. Because let's look at it this way. If basically he had his 3 studs, and he didn't draft anyone productive. Not one player that he drafted was productive more than just a few weeks for him. But he picked up Jimmy Graham, he picked up Marvin Jones. I guess Devontae Adams. I'll give him Devontae Adams. Sorry, I missed him. But
Which once A-Raj comes back, he'll be doing better too.
I think Adams is better with Hundley. I think Jordy is the one that benefits with.
They both benefit, but Hundley had no passing touchdowns last week, and Aaron Rodgers will. So, I mean, I
see what you're saying. The offense is better with Rodgers, obviously, but I think the targets go down for Adams. It's just the quality of targets go up, so it's kind of it's probably a lateral move there. Jordy is the one that really benefits, I think, from him coming back. So it just depends. Are Jeremy's strengths big enough to overcome his weaknesses? Because Elliott is going to come back week 16 if Jeremy makes the championship and he plays Seattle, with them probably daring Dak to throw at this point.
And going for a playoff spot, and the Cowboys are not.
I'm sorry?
And the Seahawks will be vying for a playoff spot when the Cowboys are not going to be.
Yeah, so I think you've got to look at, is Tom Brady, Lev Bell, Ezekiel Elliott enough to overcome some of these guys, and can Marvin Jones continue to be hot? That was kind of an MO last year. He got hot and cooled off quite a bit. So
Marvin Jones is only...
He's an interesting team. I knew he was a lock last year pretty much to win it, barring any crazy upset. I don't think that this year. I don't think he's the favorite.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, the bye week definitely increases your odds, but as far as the roster goes, he's not there. He definitely has a fighting chance, but Juju Smith-Schuster's out. He lucked out again because he just got suspended and he's got the bye week. So they really did scab out on these bye weeks. So congratulations to you two. I will say you did deserve them. Cody's got a solid team and he took out Volk, and Volk, you didn't select your team and didn't put Kamara in, and that's what happens. So make sure you put in Kamara. I want to be able to be the best. You got to beat the best. So let's do this thing, Volk. But anyways, that's what we got. I just got a few other things here. Surprises on the year. Do you got any big surprises this fantasy year? We talked about it a little bit, but did you want to highlight anything in particular?
It has been a crazy year as far as just the number of players that it's just like the players are not good, but they're performing for fantasy. So I take there are guys who haven't been good historically. So I'll take a guy like Chris Thompson. People didn't even realize he was like a top 10 fantasy back when he was for his ACL. And before that, he was a borderline bench guy in previous years. I would doubt that he was even drafted in our league. Take a guy like Jerick McKinnon, pretty much written off, would never really have much of an opportunity as Dalvin Cook was here. Dalvin Cook goes down. Kind of like, oh no, the same thing we saw last year with when Peterson went down, how we had no running game, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, Jerick McKinnon's a top 15 back now. Same with Buck Allen when Danny Woodhead was out. We've seen him before. He didn't do anything. Case Keenum, Adam Thielen going from just a good receiver and getting to watch him every week. He's a great receiver, man. That guy does everything well. And it's just the emergence of all these random guys that it seems like it's more than previous years. I know it's kind of the name of fantasy football, that guys can come out of nowhere. But this is almost the type of year where you didn't want to go zero running back. You didn't want to go zero wide receiver. You wanted to go zero everything and just skip the first 4 rounds of your draft and just basically random shots on these guys and extend your roster a little bit. I mean, it's you almost would have been better off, because how many guys from the first couple rounds have worked out? It seems like less than half is how you wanted.
Yeah, I'm in 2 leagues, and I would say I've never seen so many 6 or 7 or 7 and 6 teams that have ever been in fantasy football. I also have seen a lot less elite teams too. And I think it's just the pocket of teams has been a lot more conglomerated, and it's creating for better competition. But at the same time, I don't think you're going to have a lot of stud teams this year. Obviously, if you had Kamara and what's my guy's name again? My running back, Kareem Hunt. You're looking good. Leonard Fournette, obviously, these rookie running backs really took off this year. I was not expecting that.
This was touted as a great running back class, but I want to ask you a quick question about your observation. So, do you think that the reason that we're not seeing these elite teams is because there hasn't been a lot of consistently elite players? It seems like, Julio has been kind of in and out, and he's had great games. And then you even mentioned like a guy like Kamara or Keenan Allen, they're coming on as of late. Kareem Hunt went crazy at first, but now he's not. Le'Veon Bell has been good, not great. What do you think? Do you think it's because we don't have the Zeke Elliott and David Johnsons of last year, where they're consistently beating everyone every week?
That's a tough question, because you still have your studs. You have your stud running backs. I think obviously Ezekiel Elliott, Le'Veon Bell, your top 3 guys are still performing like they were last year. What I think is changing is that defenses are taking away top weapons, kind of that Belichick strategy. And it's kind of a combination of Belichick and that Seahawks cover 3. And I think more talent is going on the defensive side of the ball, where it creates players that normally don't get targets or don't get attention are now getting less attention by defenses and are getting more action, which it just causes a larger distribution amongst the fantasy points going to a larger pool of players, which just creates less fantasy production from what we see as not going to the studs. I think if you looked at obviously the turnover is interesting, but I think you'll still see a very similar. People aren't passing less; they're not running less. The yardage for teams is still the same. It's just going to a wider distribution of players. So that would be mine. And I think what that does too, it kind of goes along with your point of the turnover in players that you never expected to be good are now getting more looks, and your Adam Thielens, your Robbie Andersons, even your Cooper Kupps, your Devin Funchesses, your Nelson Aguilars, your Marvin Jones, these players that on other teams or previous years are not producing are now given that opportunity. And I think that starts with how defenses are playing and the way offenses respond to that. So that's my biggest hypothesis on that.
Good point, yeah.
But my biggest surprise on this year, I think if you would have told me Alvin Kamara and Marvin Ingram would both be top 5 running backs, I don't think I would have believed you at all. That would have been preposterous. Like we mentioned all those wide receivers that we were kind of thinking about. Those are all crazy turnover. Never thought they'd be anywhere near top 15 wide receivers, and they all are. And I think Jordo's team is the biggest surprise to me this year. And I think a lot of that is kind of what we're talking about. He had Kevin Hogan too. I don't know if you remember before he got hurt. He was another prime example of a wide receiver that got more targets because of the way offenses were responding to Gronk and other players on the Patriots offense. So I think a team.
No, it's true.
A team like Jordan's, even a team like Cody's, and they really benefited from this, and Jeremy benefited too a lot from it as well. You and me have not so much. We've kind of have relied on our studs to try to get us through and proven commodities, and that's becoming less valuable at this point in time.
Well, if history is any indication, in a standard league, you want studs because they have the highest chance of getting you a touchdown.
Yep.
Touchdowns are still what make this league roll. It's just, like you said, they're not going to a lot of the studs. But, you look at, in like a PPR league, yeah, Jarvis Landry has a ton of value because he'll get 6 more catches than a guy like Devin Funchess.
Yep.
But if Devin Funchess can score that touchdown, that 6 makes up for it. But in this league, Jarvis Landry's 10 for 57 doesn't get you a lot of points because he's not scoring the touchdown. So in the end, I think the strategy of having studs will win out. It's just been tough to identify who the studs are going to be this year. And it might be a fluky year. It might be a changing of the guard in the NFL where, maybe these young hotshot play callers are really having an impact, and these short passes with people that can do it are kind of taking away the guys like Mike Evans and Julio Jones and AJ Green because they don't want to sit around and wait for them to get downfield.
At this point in time, I think even in a PPR standpoint, your OBJ, your Antonio Brown, your Julio Jones, they all averaged between like 200 and 250 fantasy points in that window. And a lot of those guys you're just speaking of, that window has dropped to be more like 175 to 225. Well, that's a lot of points. But that does a couple other things. It also makes the value of your quarterback that much higher, especially in this league. And running back production has gone up. I feel like you started needing those top 20 running backs, even though they split time. I feel like that's a better odds. Like wide receivers are dying a little bit. I don't know. What do you think about that?
That was I don't know if you remember this, Lane, but I actually predicted that last year. It was that I didn't have good examples then, but I just saw with the way the NFL was heading that a running back who could catch passes was going to be so valuable going forward. And for the most part, that's true. You get guys like Ezekiel Elliott who doesn't catch a ton of passes but just gets crazy volume. And other than that, if you don't catch passes, you're basically fantasy irrelevant. It's tough to be a top-tier running back without catching passes. And I think that's the only way that they can stay on the field, honestly, enough to get the opportunities, enough to do it. Now, if you can do it all, then you're super valuable. And what teams are doing is they're riding these running backs into the ground quickly. But it's an old adage that even in standard leagues, a catch is worth twice as much as a carry historically. So if you can get, even if you're a guy like Alvin Kamara, you only get 11 carries a game. If you can get 6 catches, that's equal to Leonard Fournette's 24 carries. So it really evens out over the long run, and I think the talent coming out of college is all in running back. We haven't seen a good wide receiver since 14, basically. Who was the last first-round pick who's done well in the NFL? So things even out eventually. We'll get some good wide receivers, and teams will adjust and start to get faster linebackers to guard these running backs. But then cornerbacks will suffer, and wide receivers will blossom again. It just kind of ebbs and flows like that.
Yeah, I think the tight end position is becoming more vital, even though that doesn't translate to fantasy production or fantasy wealth. There's just a higher talent of tight ends that could have been wide receivers but decided to gain weight and be put on the line. And then you have on defense, tall cornerbacks. There's a lot of 6'2" cornerbacks nowadays that could have very well gone to be wide receivers in high school and college that were scouted as cornerbacks. So we'll see if anything changes. The thing about those tall cornerbacks, they're good at tackling running backs too. So I don't see that trend stopping anytime soon. And it might be something where offenses are just going to be focusing less on wide receiver, but it also shows the value of an elite wide receiver. I mean, if you have one of the top 5 guys, and by top 5 I mean Evans, Julio, Antonio Brown, OBJ, Michael Thomas, defenses do game plan against that, and that opens up the rest of your offense. I would like to see if Michael Thomas wasn't on the Saints, how productive Ingram and Kamara would be. To me, I think defenses would rather keep the offense in front of them, as they like to say. But
Yeah.
that may change, where they might be one-on-one with Michael Thomas, and then Michael Thomas and these elite wide receivers might get more production once defenses change their philosophy, but not anytime soon.
Yeah, we're getting along, but I do agree with you. I think the new style of play calling is really quick hitting offense. Get the ball to your best players in space quickly, and if it's 7 chunk yards, that's fine. If they break a tackle, it's a touchdown. So I think that plays well to a guy like Keenan Allen, like Alvin Kamara, like Le'Veon Bell, who all they have to do is make one guy miss and they're 20 yards down the field. Kareem Hunt, same thing.
Tyreek Hill.
It just, yeah. Those guys seem to be thriving, and it might be a change in offense, and then once defenses adjust and figure it out, and then it changes again. So just try to be ahead of the curve instead of behind it, I suppose.
Yep, I like it. So I think the biggest stat for us going forward that I'm going to be tracking is yards per target or yards per catch. I think that's probably going to be the best way you can go going forward. And the players in this previous year that got the highest last year are still producing this year. So a little investment advice for you. All right, Sam. Well, we did go long. Thanks for listening to us. You probably will not be listening to the last 20 minutes of this. That's fine. I mean, Sam like to talk to each other anyways, but we love y'all, and if you're in the playoffs, go get them.
Yep, thanks everyone. This was a real fun season. One I'll remember for a long time, so thank you everybody.
Peace.